Ladd McConkey isn't my favorite fantasy asset from the Chargers, but he is the best fantasy value on his team. I go through the AFC team by team and tell you which player is the best fantasy value in 2026 drafts on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. I am Michelle Magdziuk. Today I'm going to go through each AFC team and tell you my favorite fantasy value from each of those teams. I did this on the last show with the NFC team, so if you listen to that, it's not about the best, the player that I think will score the most fantasy points in the season for each team, but instead it's which player will give you the best value for their draft costs in 2026. So let's start with the West for the AFC with the Los Angeles Chargers. And I like a lot of players on this team. I love Amarian Hampton this year. At running back 9 costs, I think he was definitely in consideration for me for best value. I love Oronde Gadsden at tight end, and I think he's a good value too. But for my favorite value for the Chargers, I'm going to go with wide receiver Ladd McConkey at wide receiver 21. He's going lower this year because of his bad second year, but I think there's reasons for this, and we should look more towards what he did as a rookie and say, okay, this is what more that he'll be looking like in his third season. He was a wide receiver 18 on average in his 2024 rookie season with a really big second half of the year. That did fall off drastically in year 2 at wide receiver 38, but the Chargers did not bring back Keenan Allen in free agency. So Keenan Allen hasn't signed anywhere else, but as long as Keenan Allen stays off the Chargers, I'm going to love Ladd McConkey this year. His targets were not that different from year 1 to year 2. His catch percentage went down drastically in this different role because he wasn't able to play in the slot as much with Allen there, but 73% catch rate in 2024 to 62% in 2025. His yards per reception went down from 14 to 12. So just off the bat, if he can get back to his averages as a rookie, already things will be better for him in fantasy. But I also think his targets should increase. Last year, he had 106 targets, second on the team to Keenan Allen's 122. Keenan Allen was really bad. So I cannot, not really bad, but really bad in terms of efficiency. This offense was not thriving with him as the top guy. So I cannot imagine they bring him back. I think Ladd McConkey will be hyper targeted this upcoming season as the top guy in Mike McDaniel's offense now as OC with the Chargers. So again, Ladd McConkey, wide receiver 21, best value for the Chargers. Moving on to the Chiefs, we just got recent news about Rashee Rice. And with that news, now at his current cost at wide receiver 12, he is the best value on this team. So the recent news is the NFL is not going to take discipline on Rice for his off-field, issues with the allegations coming this offseason from his kid's mom and all of those allegations. But at the moment, they say they're not going to take any action. So as of right now, he is good to go for the 2026 season. And I mean, when he's out there, right, the issue is he hasn't been out there because in 2024, he tore his ACL after a few games and missed the majority of the season. And then last year, he was suspended for the first 6 games of the year and then missed a few more games at the end of the season with a concussion. But when he's on the field, he is a fantastic fantasy asset over the last couple of years. He has been the wide receiver 5 in average scoring over the last 2 seasons at 14.1 points per game. He averaged 15.5 points per game last year. That was good enough for wide receiver 5 as well. But over the last 2 seasons, only Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jackson Smith-Njigba have averaged more fantasy points per game than Rashee Rice. Again, small sample size. It's only been 12 games played over those two seasons. But even though he only played 8 games last season, not even half a season, he still led the Chiefs in targets, and he tied for the most receiving touchdowns on the team with Hollywood Brown, which, by the way, Hollywood Brown is no longer there. He's moved on to a new team with the Eagles. So Rashee Rice is going to have to do it all again. Travis Kelce, obviously not getting any younger. Xavier Worthy just isn't it. So Rashee Rice is going to keep being the man there. Obviously, in terms of Rashee Rice's upside, he's going to need Patrick Mahomes back sooner rather than later. But Rashee Rice at wide receiver 12, a really good cost for him. Moving on to a much harder team to figure out the best value for, the Las Vegas Raiders. There's really only 2 viable fantasy options on the Raiders offense right now. Maybe that changes after the draft, but one of them being Brock Bowers at tight end 2. He's going in the second round. I can't call him the best value. Like, I think fine, if you take him, you're not going to be too upset overall, but with Colston Loveland going at 43, well behind Brock Bowers, Tyler Warren going at 59, Harold Fannin Jr. going at 75. I like all of those values more than Bowers. So I can't say Bowers is the best value. I'm going to go with Ashton Jeanty at running back 7. Is it risky? Yes, but I do think he's a better value than Brock Bowers at his position, because I still think Ashton Jeanty could be a top 3 running back, right? So I still think there's upside at his current cost, especially now that he gets to work under Clint Kubiak as play caller. Ashton Jeanty is getting a lot of hate, right? He did not do what anyone wanted him to do in his rookie year. He was being drafted extremely early, he was the running back 17 in average points per game. And it was a very, very inconsistent rookie season. But at the end of the day, on a terrible offense and with terrible coaches and just nobody knew what they were doing on that Raiders staff or team, Ashton Jeanty as a rookie still put up over 1,300 scrimmage yards and he scored 10 touchdowns. There's only going up from here, right? And he still showed massive upside in any given week. He had a couple games of over 30 fantasy points in his rookie year. Again, like Chip Kelly was such a bad fit. He was messing with Ashton Jeanty all over the place. The Geno Smith couldn't stop throwing interceptions. The offensive line had a ton of injuries, including their all-star Colton Miller, who suffered a season-ending injury in week 4. Get him back. That's already a massive upgrade. Like I said, the Kubiak signing to head coach, he's super run heavy. And what he showed with the Seahawks, he was brilliant, a brilliant play caller. He was the Saints OC in 2024 when Alvin Kamara was the running back 6 in fantasy. He worked with Christian McCaffrey with the 49ers. He was on that offensive staff in 2023. Christian McCaffrey went off. So he knows how to work with these guys, especially the dual threat running backs that can both run the ball and be great pass catchers as well. So I expect Ashton Jeanty to have a much better second year than his first year. So I think his value at running back 7 is still very solid. Moving on to the Broncos, I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins at running back 31, going 88th overall currently in drafts. He was a running back 22 on average last year from weeks 1 through 10. And then he missed the rest of the year with a Liz Frank injury. This is the thing with Dobbins. Like, if you're drafting him, you're probably not going to get him for the full year. It just doesn't happen with him. Poor guy can't stay healthy. But when he is out in the field, he produces. So you're getting a nice discount on him. Again, running back 22 in average scoring last year, now going as running back 31 because he is probably going to miss a couple games at least. But RJ Harvey is going earlier than him, and I just don't think that's the right go about. Like, Harvey could be involved in the passing game a lot more than Dobbins, sure. But now that they added Jalen Waddle, I also just don't see Harvey being overly utilized as a receiver either. And when this team had Dobbins and had Harvey, it was Dobbins who massively led this backfield in carries. He had 153 carries from weeks 1 through 10 to RJ Harvey's 50 carries, and J.K. Dobbins got all the goal line work and all of that. So I think the Broncos brought back J.K. Dobbins. That was their decision. So clearly they liked what they saw from him last year, and clearly they didn't love what they saw from RJ Harvey as the starting running back last year. His efficiency was terrible when he had to be the main guy. This Broncos defense should still absolutely be elite, which will allow the team to lean on Dobbins in the run game more. He's not going to put up monster numbers, but he can give you anywhere from 13 to 15 fantasy points in any given week. Like, if you can get him as the third running back, on your team, it's going to be a great value there. Or even as RB2, if you're waiting for your RB2 on your roster, J.K. Dobbins, I think, could be a really good value. Let's move on to the AFC North. Going to start here with the Ravens. And I'm going to go with Mark Andrews as my favorite value for the Ravens. He's going as tight end 16. And I get it. Last year was really, really bad, right? And that's coming off his 2024 season where he ended the year with that drop 2-point conversion and in the playoffs to kick the Ravens out of the playoffs and not advance. So a lot of badness feelings going around Mark Andrews. But let's not forget, every year leading up to 2025, he was a top 7 tight end, top 5 in all of the years outside of 2024. So 2024 tight end 7 on average, 2023 tight end 4, 2022 tight end 3, 2021 tight end 1, tight end 4 in 2020, and tight end 4 in 2019. So he's consistently top 7, at least tight end. And now he's going as tight end 16 just because of one really bad season last year. The Ravens moved on from everyone because it wasn't working anymore. Mark Andrews is still only 30 years old. Like, that's not very old for a tight end. He could still be very, very productive. And they moved on from Isaiah Likely and Charlie Collier. So the two guys taking snaps away from Mark Andrews are gone in this tight end room. They have a new OC and Declan Doyle, the Bears OC, who loved him some Colston Loveland at the end of last year. And Andrews still had the second most targets on the Ravens last year, behind only Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers and Andrews were actually the only guys on the team with more than 40 targets. So Mark Andrews is a necessity for this team this upcoming year, especially in the red zone. He can come down with a lot of touchdowns. Mark Andrews at tight end 16, a very solid value, even if he's not super exciting of a guy to draft, but way too good of a value. And before we take a quick break, I'm going to go through one more team. Let's go with the Steelers. I'm going to go with DK Metcalf as my favorite value for this team at wide receiver 34 off the board for the upcoming drafts. Last year, it wasn't great, right? But his first year with the Steelers, he was with Arthur Smith's offense that loves to run, and he had no help whatsoever to allow him to get open. But he was still the wide receiver 24 in fantasy and average scoring per game at 10.5 points per game. So that's 10 spots higher than what he's going with now. And I don't think it would get worse for him this upcoming year. Like, they added Michael Pittman Jr. I don't think that affects DK Metcalf. I think it's finally someone else on the field that defenses have to be a little bit worried about. That's great to give him some more space. We saw Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers start to build that connection at the end of the year a lot. He scored 12 plus fantasy points in 3 of the final 5 games of the season that he played last year. And obviously this is all me thinking with Aaron Rodgers coming back to the team. If not, I don't know where they're going to go with quarterback. But in the games that they actually had to throw the ball last year, the Steelers, and they didn't lean on the run game as much, the games with 4 plus receptions. That's all I'm saying for DK Metcalf, right? In the games that DK Metcalf had at least 4 receptions last year, he averaged 13.3 points per game. If he does that next year, averages even close to 13.3 points per game in half PPR, he's going to be a fantastic, fantastic value at wide receiver 34. All right, let's take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors, and then we will continue with the AFC North teams and the rest of the AFC teams to go with the best values team by team. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now, and it's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is, struggling with money doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something I've thought about, how easy it is to put pressure on yourself financially without really talking about it, the expectations you feel to have everything together, and how that pressure can spill into other areas of your life. Therapy isn't about financial advice. It's about working through the stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockdown. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockdown. I want to thank you all again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. And if you're with us every day, usually it's Vinny and I, but he's out for a couple days here. Just don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes every day, Monday through Friday. You get access to a group chat with Vinny and I and other listeners of the show, all for just $5 a month. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com to learn more. Continuing to go through our AFC teams, let's go to the Bengals. My favorite value for the Bengals has to be T. Higgins at wide receiver, 16, going in the late third round right now for 2026 drafts. That's where he's projected to go. Last year, he's a wide receiver at 11 on average at 12 points per game. Slow start to the season. That does happen with the Bengals often, with Joe Burrow taking a second to get going. And then also with last year, we had the Burrow injury as well. And that offense was terrible to start the year until they got Joe Flacco into the building. But from weeks 6 through 18, once the Bengals got Joe Flacco, plus Joe Burrow came back later in the year, T. Higgins averaged nearly 15 points per game at 14.8 points per game over those 10 games. He was the wide receiver 7 an average. He was a wide receiver 3 on average in 2024 at 15.5 points per game. So over the last 2 seasons combined, he's scored the 7th most points on average among all wide receivers to play at least 20 games in that span, behind only Jamar Chase, his teammate, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, JSN, Devontae Adams, and Drake London. Like T. Higgins, even though he's a wide receiver 2, he's a fantastic fantasy asset, and him being a wide receiver 2 with Jamar Chase keeps his price down as well. So wide receiver 16, great value for him there. The last AFC North team here, the Browns. I'm going with second-year tight end Harold Fannin Jr. Really good rookie season, especially towards the end of the year with Shedeur Sanders. But right now he's going as tight end 5, and that seems pricey. It could be a little risky, but 75th overall. So there is a big gap between him and the tight ends going ahead of him. Yeah, there's a couple tight ends going ahead of him that were also rookies last year from the 2025 draft class. Colston Loveland, he's going 43rd overall. So about 30 spots ahead of Harold Fannin Jr. Overall. And then Tyler Warren is going 59th overall on average. So still a good 16 spots ahead of Harold Fannin Jr., which I think that makes him a pretty solid value, considering I think he has the same upside as those guys. Yes, he's probably going to be stuck in a bad offense. Like, I don't expect the Browns offense to be very good, but they weren't good last year either. And he was very productive for fantasy. He led the Browns in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns as a rookie. He finished as the tight end 8 in average scoring in his rookie season at 9.4 points per game. That was the most among all the rookie tight ends. So more than Loveland, more than Tyler Warren. And he's being thought of behind those guys now, which I don't necessarily hate. Like, I love Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren this year, but that little nice value you get from Fannin Jr., it makes him very enticing, especially if it is going to be Shedeur Sanders starting next year. We have to wait and see. But when Sanders got his first start in week 12, from there on, Harold Fannin Jr. really took off. He was averaging 7 targets a game, 52 receiving yards per game, had 4 touchdowns from weeks 12 through 17. He didn't participate in week 18 with a groin injury, but also during that span was averaging 12.3 points per game. That was the tight end 4 in average points per game during that span, behind only Trey McBride, George Kittle, and Kyle Pitts. And now we have David Njoku gone. So really nothing to worry about either with him losing snaps or anything like that. Moving on to the AFC South, and I'm going to start with the Jaguars here. I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. at wide receiver 35, 73rd overall player going off the board right now in fantasy drafts. He was electric his rookie season and fell apart last year. He was drafted as a first-round pick in fantasy drafts last year, or second round at worst, and he did not come through. That's for sure. But he dealt with a core injury or shoulder injury, and I think it kept him from being willing to take those big hits over the middle. which allowed for some bad connections between he and Trevor Lawrence. And then he also dealt with a high ankle sprain in week 9. So it's like it was a bunch of different injuries. Now we have Travis Hunter there as well that could be back, but at the same time, the team is saying they want to use him more as a cornerback than a wide receiver. And it'll be the second year in Liam Cohen's offense. And I have to believe if Liam Cohen did not think that he could get Brian Thomas Jr. to be more productive, to look like himself as a rookie, at least close to it, that they would have traded him this year in the offseason, because he still has good value for teams to still trade for him. But the Jaguars has seemingly decided to keep him. So hopefully Liam Cohen can figure it out. But I don't think we could see what we got out of Brian Thomas Jr. in his rookie season, and he just fell apart that hard. I think he'll come back to life, not as a top 10 wide receiver, but definitely worth his wide receiver 35 cost. The Colts, I'm going with Tyler Warren at tight end 4. He's going a round and a half after Colston Loveland. So when it comes to the Colts, Jonathan Taylor's going super early in drafts. I don't think like he's an insane value. Daniel Jones is coming off an Achilles tear. I'm not going to say he's a great value. Alec Pierce, he's going to have some big games. Going to be really hard to figure out. So when you're really looking overall at this team, I do think Tyler Warren's draft cost is the best among the group. He's going around pick 60 overall right now among all positions. And I think he's going to be well worth that. We saw him have a great start to his rookie season. It did fall off at the end, but Tyler Warren was a tight end 3 overall in fantasy points scored from weeks 1 through 13. Then Daniel Jones gets hurt in week 14, misses the rest of the year. And we saw his numbers drop insanely, right? And it had nothing to do with the targets. He was still heavily involved in the game plan. From weeks 14 through 18, without Daniel Jones, he averaged 6.8 targets per game. With Daniel Jones, he averaged 6.5 targets per game. So nearly identical. But the yards got cut more than half, from 57 receiving yards per game with Jones to 26 receiving yards per game the rest of the way. His yards per reception dropped by over 4 yards per reception. He did not score a touchdown without Daniel Jones, and his fantasy points per game dropped by 6 points per game. Warren already last year as a rookie, led the Colts in targets. Michael Pittman had the second most targets on the team, and now he's been traded to the Steelers. Alec Pierce sure got paid, but he only had 84 targets last year. That could go up a bit. Tyler Warren, though, I can't imagine not being the center point on this offense and leading the team in targets again and having those opportunities for touchdowns. So as long as Daniel Jones isn't horrendous, I think Tyler Warren very much makes a great value at 59 overall. For the Texans, I'm going to go with Tank Dell. I do like Nico Collins. He's going around wide receiver 9, 10 right now. I think that's fine value. Maybe David Montgomery can come through as well as a good running back 2 type. But I don't want people to forget about Tank Dell. Right now, he's going as a wide receiver 65. So undrafted in most regular leagues. And it's because he hasn't been on the field for a long time. He suffered that significant knee injury in week 16 of 2024, and we have not seen him since. And even before that injury, it wasn't great for fantasy like it was in his rookie year. But I will say he was utilized a ton near the goal line and in the red zone. In 24 career games played over his first 2 seasons, he has the second most touchdowns caught from CJ Stroud. So over that span since 2023, he has 10 touchdowns from Stroud, only behind Nico Collins since entering the league in 2023. And then in games where he was out there active, getting the targets, very, very good. 14 career games with at least 5 targets. He averaged 15 points per game and half PPR in those 14 games. Over those 14 games, he gained 1,134 receiving yards and 9 receiving touchdowns. Like, think about that if he did that for a full season, that would be great. And he did that in 14 games. There's only been 7 wide receivers that have averaged more points per game and games with at least 5 targets since 2023 than Tank Dell. And the list is fantastic. It's Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, and Tank Dell's teammate Nico Collins. But over these last few years here, in games with at least 5 targets, Tank Dell and Nico Collins are averaging pretty much the same points per game. Nico Collins is at 15.0 points per game. Tank Dell is at 14.99. Now we'll see how he performs coming back from injury, but I think going undrafted, he is well worth a last round pick and a great value there, who could be, if he hits and he's healthy, he's going to be a huge plus to your team. Going to the Titans, I'm going to go with Cam Ward. I'm not like pumped to draft him, but not a lot of great options here right now until we get to the draft. We'll see if they take Jeremiah Love or not. If they don't, then Tony Pollard can become a solid option, but I'm going to stick with Cam Ward. He's going as quarterback 25. Obviously, in one quarterback leagues, like I'm not going to be thinking about drafting him, but if you're in a 2 quarterback league, he can be a very good value. He did start to come along for fantasy at the end of his rookie season. He had at least 2 passing touchdowns in 4 of his last 5 games played. Only 159 rushing yards on the ground with 2 rushing touchdowns in the season. So that does have to go up for him to have high upside. But then the Titans bringing in Brian Daboll as their new OC, I do think will help Cam Ward out. Think about all the dual threat quarterbacks that Brian Daboll has coached up, and Josh Allen and Daniel Jones and Jackson Dart. They have all had great moments as fantasy players under Brian Daboll. And yes, they need more weapons still, but I mean, they're trying. They added Wan'Dale Robinson for Cam Ward this year. Shamir Dike and Alec Aominer will be in their 2nd season. So more, consistency there for Cam Ward. Also tight end Gunnar Helm coming into his 2nd year. Hopefully Calvin Ridley can perform better. And honestly, I think if they draft Jeremiah Love, that would be great for Cam Ward as well to take some pressure off of him. So if you're in a 2 quarterback league waiting for that 2nd quarterback, I think Cam Ward can be a very good draft value. Let's take another break, and then we will finish up our AFC teams with the AFC East. All right, moving on to the AFC East, starting with the Bills. I'm going to go with their new acquisition, DJ Moore. They just traded a 2nd-round pick for him in this year's draft. He's now going as a wide receiver 27 in fantasy. And the Bills have been looking for a true wide receiver 1 for Josh Allen. And obviously, when it comes to fantasy assets, Josh Allen and James Cook, fantastic. But Josh Allen is going as quarterback 1. James Cook is going at running back 5. That's pretty much where I expect them to finish, right? Somewhere around there. So the value you're getting out of them at their draft cost is not going to be like the best possible. DJ Moore, though, I think can finish well ahead of wide receiver 27. I mean, he's been put into a situation with really stacked offenses as of late in Chicago. It wasn't really working out there with Caleb Williams. His last year with Justin Fields, though, was fantastic when he was like pretty much the only guy in Chicago. In 2023, he was a wide receiver 10 in fantasy that season. That was his highest finish. He has already played in a Joe Brady offense in 2020 and 2021. He was a wide receiver 23 and the wide receiver 30 in those 2 seasons. And you might say, okay, well, that doesn't seem like it's that great, but he was playing with horrendous quarterbacks at that time. It was Teddy Bridgewater, a bad old, aging Cam Newton, Sam Darnold, PJ Walker. Those were the quarterbacks he was playing with. So I don't want to determine him too much. He's still in his prime. He's only 28 years old, about to turn 29. And last year in the games where he saw at least 6 targets, he was still producing. He scored 15.6 points per game on average last year in the 5 games with at least 6 targets. And I think that Josh Allen should be leaning on DJ Moore. This is going to be the best wide receiver he has played with since Stephon Diggs left town a few years ago. I think DJ Moore can be a true wide receiver 1 for Josh Allen and a heavy target guy in that offense. Moving to the Super Bowl losers, the Patriots. Now, they haven't added much to this offense this year, just Romeo Dobbs. He's not going to be my best value on this team. I don't necessarily think anyone is a great value on this team, especially Drake May. He's going super early. I'm worried about him falling back in fantasy points a bit. I'm going to go with Travion Henderson at running back 21, because if the coaches actually give him a shot and he's on the field more, he's going to destroy that cost. Now, if he doesn't work on his pass protection and the team still can't trust him and he still splits time with Ramondre Stevenson, then he's going to not really come through at that cost, but he won't finish that different than him at the worst, in my opinion. He was a running back 24 on average last year in his rookie season at 11.1 points per game. He's only moved up 3 spots in the rankings, and he showed elite breakaway abilities And he definitely is the better overall player than Ramondre Stevenson. And in terms of like changing the game for the Patriots and helping them in offense, the issue was the pass protection. He could not do that as a rookie. Now, if he works on that this offseason, he's able to get on the field more, he's more trustworthy, he's going to ball out. In the 7 games, he got at least 12 carries last year. He averaged 19 fantasy points per game in half PPR. That was the 5th most points per game in games with at least 12 carries among running backs last year, behind only Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and Jonathan Taylor. He can be a top-notch running back. He just needs to get the opportunity. And if he gets that opportunity, he's going to thrive. So I'm willing to say he's the best value on the Patriots at running back 21 cost. We have 2 more teams, the Jets and the Dolphins, 2 horrific offenses. Not easy to find good fantasy values for this year. But for the Jets, I'm going to go with Mason Taylor because it's certainly not going to be Breece Hall. I think he's far too expensive at running back 16. Garrett Wilson was in consideration at wide receiver 15, but this offense is such a mess. And Garrett Wilson, even when he gets highly targeted and has insane volume, it's still not great fantasy points for the most part. So I'm going to go with Mason Taylor coming into his 2nd year at tight end. As a rookie tight end, he led the Jets in targets and receptions. I mean, it wasn't a lot, but you didn't have to do a lot to lead that team. And he played just 13 games. So played 13 games. His rookie season ended early with a neck injury. They really haven't added any competition for snaps and targets for Mason Taylor. I mean, Jeremy Rucker is his backup tight end right now, so he should be starting every game, out on the field majority of the time. And with Geno Smith there, it's going to be Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor, I think, where Geno Smith is throwing the ball to the most. Geno Smith takes over Justin Fields, so there should be more passes over the middle for Mason Taylor. Frank Reich is now the OC. I think he's more capable offensive play caller than what the Jets have had as of late. So I think Mason Taylor, a late round pick, especially in a 2 tight end league or anything like that, could be a really solid value. And to close out today's show, I'm going to go with Malik Willis as the best value for the Dolphins at quarterback 20. Again, in a 1 quarterback league, I'm probably not messing with it. Malik Willis can be a really good fantasy asset with his rushing upside. We saw that in his last 2 starts at 25 points, 32 points, with over 60 rushing yards in both of those games, 3 rushing touchdowns over those 2 games. Like, that's fantastic. But the issue is he has no one to throw to. So how is he going to get it done through the air? They're going to have to do some serious work in the draft to get Malik Willis some actual wide receivers, because right now Tutu Atwell is basically his top wide receiver on the team. I like Devin Achane as a player, but I am terrified of his cost at running back 6. So that's why he's not my pick here. If I'm going to go with one value on the Dolphins, if I'm going to consider anybody at their cost, it would be Malik Willis at quarterback 20. All right, that is it for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in today to Locked On Fantasy Football. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Fantasy Football so you get all the latest episodes. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Fantasy Football ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Enjoy your night, everybody. Bye, y'all.